A black government sedan rolls slowly down a quiet street in Pinecrest, Florida. It stops in front of a house. Two federal agents step out. They walk up the path. They knock on the front door. Inside is a 16-year-old boy. He is not a terrorist. He is not a spy. He has no handlers, no funding, no network. He has never purchased a weapon. He has never left the country. His entire life has been lived within 20 miles of this house. He is a teenager. He does homework. He eats cereal. He owns a computer. The agents knock again. His name is Jonathan James. And over the last 8 months, from this bedroom, in this house, he did something no American had ever done before him. He broke into the United States Department of Defense. He read private emails between senior defense officials. He intercepted communications from one of the most classified agencies in the country. He walked into NASA's servers and removed the software that kept astronauts alive in space. He forced NASA to shut down for 21 days. He was 15 when he started. This is the story of C0 Mraid, the most dangerous teenager in American history. And the question the United States government had no answer for. What do you do with a child who just broke into the Pentagon? Jonathan Joseph James was born on December 12, 1983. Pinecrest, Florida. A quiet, wealthy suburb on the southern edge of Miami-Dade County. Tree-lined streets. Private schools. The kind of neighborhood where nothing unusual happens and nobody expects it to. His parents divorced when he was young. He stayed with his father, Robert James. The household was calm. Not broken. Not troubled. Just a father and a son, living quietly in South Florida. Jonathan was not a difficult kid. He was not failing school. He was not angry or antisocial. He was curious. Not the ordinary kind, the kind that doesn't switch off. The kind that pulls things apart to see what's underneath. His father bought him a computer. That was it. That was the moment. Most kids in the mid-1990s used computers for games, for chat rooms, for homework they could have done by hand. Jonathan moved through those things fast and kept going. He wanted to understand the machine itself. Not the interface, the architecture underneath. The protocols. The logic that made one computer in Florida talk to another on the other side of the world. He started reading. Technical manuals. Network architecture guides. Hacker publications that circulated in print and online, FRAC, 2600. The culture around hacking in the late 1990s very specific systems should be understood, and finding a way was itself a form of knowledge. Jonathan absorbed every word. By 13 he was writing code. By 14 he was testing techniques on small networks, tracking what worked, what failed, treating it like a scientific discipline. He kept notes. He documented results. He was methodical in a way most adults never are. He gave himself a name, the Comrade. It was 1998. He was 15 years old. 2 years of self-education. 2 years of building a mental map of how networks were constructed, where they were strong, and more importantly, where they weren't. Now it was time to find out how far any of it could actually take him. The answer was going to terrify the United States government. Every serious hacker understands one rule before anything else. Patience. Moving too fast gets you caught. Leaving obvious traces gets you caught. Assuming silence is the same gets you caught. Jonathan had read enough to know that most people who got caught weren't caught because they were unlucky. They were caught because they were careless. He was not going to be careless. He started with Bell South, the regional telephone network covering the southeastern United States. Not to cause damage. Not to steal data. He wanted internal documentation. System architecture diagrams. The kind of technical blueprint that shows you exactly how the infrastructure around it is built. He found a way. He took what he came for. He left nothing behind. Next was the Miami-Dade School District. Same approach. Entry, observation, exit. No disruption, no destruction. Each system he entered taught him something new. Every network had its own patterns, its own weak points. Some ran outdated authentication protocols. Some had servers with unpatched vulnerabilities that had been sitting open for years. Some simply had bad passwords on critical access points. He cataloged everything. These were practice runs. He was building a model, a working picture of how large institutional networks operated, where the edges frayed, where assumptions became gaps. He treated it the way a surgeon studies anatomy before touching a scalpel. Deliberate. Systematic. No shortcuts. Then he turned toward the federal government. The late 1990s were a strange moment in American cybersecurity. Agencies had connected their systems to the internet faster than they had developed the infrastructure to protect them. The assumption inside many departments was that government networks were simply too complex, too obscure, too layered for outsiders to navigate. That assumption was the gap Jonathan was looking for. He found the edge of the Defense Threat Reduction Agency's network. He found an inconsistency, small, specific, easy to miss, in the way one of its servers responded to certain types of external requests. Not a door left open, more like a window with a broken latch. He climbed through. The Defense Threat Reduction Agency is not a name most people know. It is one of the quietest and most consequential agencies in the American defense structure. Its mandate: identify, assess, and neutralize threats from weapons of mass destruction, chemical, biological, nuclear, radiological. It advises the Secretary of Defense. It operates alongside the NSA and the CIA. The information it handles is, by definition, some of the most sensitive in the U.S. government. Jonathan James was inside it, reading its mail. He was 15 years old, sitting at a desk in Pinecrest, Florida. What he had installed in the DTRA server was a backdoor. A hidden entry point, built into the system's own architecture, invisible to standard knowledge. He used it to intercept and download over 3,000 internal communications, emails between senior officials, internal memos, usernames and passwords, discussions about ongoing security operations and threat assessments that were never meant to leave the building. He read all of it. From his bedroom. And no one inside the agency knew he was there. But the DTRA was not his largest target. In June 1999, he turned to NASA. Specifically, the server connected to the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. The Marshall Center managed propulsion development, payload operations, and, critically, the software infrastructure supporting the International Space Station. He found his way in. What he found on that server stopped him. It was not administrative software. It was not routine processing code. It was the source code for the International Space Station's life support systems. The program governing the physical environment inside the station, temperature regulation, humidity, atmospheric pressure. The precise calibration of every system that kept the air breathable and the temperature survivable for human beings living in orbit, 250 miles above the Earth. He downloaded it. The entire package. 1.3 megabytes. NASA valued it at approximately $1.7 million. He took it from a bedroom in Florida. When NASA's security team discovered the breach, when they confirmed that an unknown party had accessed the Marshall server and removed something, they faced the situation with no safety. They did not know what had been taken. They did not know what had been altered. They could not rule out that something had been planted, code that could be triggered remotely, at an unknown time, with unknown consequences. There was one option. Shut everything down. On August 17, 1999, the computers at the Marshall Space Flight Center went offline. They stayed offline for 21 days. 3 weeks. During an active mission. With a crew aboard the International Space Station. The agency that put men on the moon, that had operated the shuttle program for nearly 2 decades, grounded its entire computing infrastructure for 3 weeks because a 15-year-old in Pinecrest had walked through its servers. The shutdown cost NASA $41,000. The investigation cost far more. Jonathan James was careful. More careful than most adults working in the same space. He routed his access through chains of intermediary systems, university computers, corporate servers, foreign networks, creating layers of distance between each action and his physical location. He understood how forensic investigators worked. He had studied the techniques. He took deliberate steps to make the trail difficult. But difficult is not invisible. No one is invisible. The first signal came from the DTRA. In the fall of 1999, security analysts running routine diagnostics identified something they could not explain. Unusual patterns in the server logs. Access sequences that matched no known employee. Data being read from locations that should have been inaccessible from outside. They called the FBI. What followed was slow and meticulous. Agents traced the path Jonathan had constructed, moving backwards, server by server, network by network, jurisdiction by jurisdiction. Each intermediary system had to be identified, contacted, and examined. Federal investigators coordinated with university IT departments, corporate administrators, and international telecom providers across multiple time zones. Months passed. The chain ended in Florida. In Pinecrest. At a residential address registered to Robert James. On January 26, 2000, federal agents arrived with a search warrant. Jonathan's hardware was seized. His drives, his disks, his handwritten notes. Everything cataloged and removed. Jonathan James, 16 years old, was arrested. And the United States government found itself facing a question that had no established answer. The kid in front of them had done more damage to federal computer infrastructure than any criminal in American history. He was in 10th grade. The Department of Justice spent months deciding what to do. Cybercrime law in 2000 was still catching up. Statutes existed. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act covered unauthorized access. What didn't exist was clear precedent for a case like this: a minor, no prior record, who had penetrated the Department of Defense, stolen life support software from a space agency, and read the private correspondence of senior defense officials for months. Tried as an adult, the charges would have been severe. Unauthorized access to protected government computers. Theft of proprietary software valued at nearly $2 million. Interception of classified communications. The potential sentence ran into decades. He was a child. Prosecutors chose the juvenile system. Jonathan cooperated fully. He answered every question. He walked investigators through every technique, every system, every file. He was transparent in a way that suggested either genuine remorse or a clear understanding that pretending otherwise was pointless. In September 2000, he was sentenced in juvenile court. 6 months of house arrest. Probation until the age of 18. A ban on recreational computer use. 2 written letters of apology, one to NASA, one to the Secretary of Defense. He did not go to prison. Not yet. 6 months into his probation, Jonathan violated the terms. The specific nature of the violation was never fully disclosed. The consequence was not ambiguous. He was remanded to a federal detention facility. He served 6 months. When he was released, he was 18 years old. He was, in the record books, the first juvenile in American history to be imprisoned for cybercrime. He walked out with a federal record, a name that had traveled across law enforcement databases and online hacker communities simultaneously, and a future that looked very narrow. He tried to move forward. He gave occasional interviews. He was measured. Not bitter. He said the things a person says when they are trying to demonstrate that they have moved on. That they have learned. That they are not the same person anymore. He had not moved on. The worst part hadn't happened yet. It starts again in 2007. TJX Companies. The retail giant behind TJ Maxx, Marshalls, and HomeGoods. In late 2006, the company disclosed a massive data breach. Over 45 million customer credit and debit card records compromised. At the time, the largest corporate data breach in American history. The Secret Service and FBI launched a joint investigation. The evidence pointed clearly toward one man, Albert Gonzalez, a Miami-based hacker operating with an international criminal network spanning Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia. Sophisticated. Organized. Well-funded. The case against him was building steadily. But investigations of this scale generate lists. Names of individuals with known hacking histories, assessed as potential suspects before being ruled out. Standard procedure. Jonathan James was on the list. Federal agents made contact with people in his circle. Associates received visits. Search warrants were served at addresses connected to individuals he knew. The machinery of federal investigation, the same machinery that had processed him as a teenager, was turning nearby again. He was not charged. He was not officially named a suspect. The evidence was not pointing at him. But he didn't know what the evidence said. What he saw was agents. Warrants. The same agencies. The same process. He had been through it once, at 16. He had cooperated. He had told them everything. He had served time. He had come out the other side with a record and a ruined reputation. He had been innocent of many things he was suspected of. It had not protected him. He did not believe it would protect him this time either. On May 18, 2008, Jonathan James was found dead in the bathroom of his home in Pinecrest, Florida. A self-inflicted gunshot wound. He was 24 years old. He left a note. In it, he wrote that he had no faith in the justice system. That he was certain he would be blamed for crimes he did not commit. That he had watched the investigation take shape around him and seen only one ending. That no amount of innocence had ever been enough to stop the machine once it started moving. That he saw no way forward. The Secret Service confirmed after his death that Jonathan James had not been a target of the TJX investigation. He was not going to be charged. There was no case against him. He died not knowing that. Albert Gonzalez was arrested later that year. Convicted in 2010. 20 years in federal prison, the longest sentence ever handed down for cybercrime in the United States at that time. The TJX case closed. NASA rebuilt its protocols. The Marshall Space Flight Center overhauled its network infrastructure. The DTRA deployed new monitoring systems. The Department of Defense commissioned comprehensive internal security reviews. Every door Jonathan had walked through was locked, patched, rebuilt. But the central question his story forces never goes away. In 1999, the most powerful military in the world was protecting itself with systems a 15-year-old could navigate from a bedroom in Florida. The private emails of defense officials were readable by a teenager who had taught himself network architecture from manuals. The life support code for the International Space Station was sitting on a server accessible over a dial-up connection by a high school student with too much time on his hands. Jonathan James did not break the United States government. He revealed it. He walked through every wall they claimed existed and found that most of them were painted on. The security was performance. The infrastructure was vast and powerful and deeply, almost embarrassingly, vulnerable in ways that officials either didn't understand or chose not to admit. He was not the last person to find this out. The Office of Personnel Management breach in 2015 exposed 21 million federal employee records. The NSA's own hacking tools were stolen and published online. Solar winds compromised hundreds of government agencies simultaneously. One after another, the same discovery: the gap between the security that exists and the security that is believed to exist is enormous. Jonathan James measured that gap first. He didn't do it to make a point. He wasn't a whistleblower. He had no political agenda. He was a kid from Florida who wanted to know how far curiosity could take him. The answer was all the way to the top. Through systems that were supposed to be unbreachable. Into communications that were supposed to be invisible to the outside world. Past layers of infrastructure that the most powerful government on Earth had built to keep people exactly like him out. He got in. He read what was there. He took what he found. And then, years later, in the same city, the same suburb, a few miles from the bedroom where it all started, he was gone. The comrade. He was 15 when he walked into the Pentagon. He was 24 when the world stopped hearing from him. And somewhere in a federal archive, there is a letter, written by a teenager, in his own handwriting, addressed to the Secretary of Defense. An apology. From the most dangerous kid in America. To the institution he walked through like it had no walls at all. Thank you so much for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe, drop a like and a comment if you like more interesting stories.